Hello everyone and welcome to this space where hidden truths are brought to light, where the fog of official narratives dissipates to reveal what is really happening in our world. For a long time, we have explored the mysteries of our own planet, that blue rock we call home, that cosmic anomaly that scientists admit is quite strange, a puzzle to be solved, that, we suspect, already has all its pieces assembled by invisible hands. We have talked about its mysterious origin, of oceans that are hidden in its depths, of a surface that breathes and moves with a life that we don't find anywhere else in the known universe, and of celestial threats that seem orchestrated. But today, it takes us to a much older, much more enigmatic text, a roadmap that not only describes an end, but seems to be being activated in real time by forces that they don't want to reveal to us. The Apocalypse. We have been taught to see the Apocalypse as the most impressive and extreme book of the Bible, sacred text that prophesies the end of times. But what if it is not just a prophecy but a script written not only by divine inspiration, but by an intelligence that has been manipulating human history from its foundations? The question that hangs in the air, whispered in the darkest corners of research, is terrifying. What secrets are hidden between its pages? How much life is left for the human species? History, they tell us, has a direction and that end is imminent. And here, brothers, is where the conspiracy takes shape, because we are already in the stage of the last of these figures. That is, the end of history is approaching. They assure us that many mention that there is a place where its inhabitants could be saved. And this is crucial, because if the end is imminent, if destruction is certain, who decides who is saved and why? The experts of the Bible, conveniently, tell us that of the 7 seals that compose this enigmatic book, 5 have already been opened. And now the tension is palpable because the 6th is about to be opened, the one that will bring the destruction of a large part of the world population. The scroll is there, they tell us, but it has 7 seals. And the key question is, who is going to tell us what is going to happen? Or, rather, who is making it happen? Because, while the world cries out at the imminence, the possibility is raised for us to not be so afraid of the end of times. A reassuring, almost condescending phrase, for those who perhaps already know the outcome. A group of scientists detected new signals in nature that would announce a natural disaster with a destructive power capable of causing the extinction of the human species. Coincidence? Or an orchestration that science discovers when it is already too late for the majority? The world ends to give way to a new world. This is the essence, brothers. It's not just destruction, it's a purge, a reconstruction. From the Tower of Babel to the universal flood, God threatens with total destruction. But what if that threat of God has been co-opted, manipulated, instrumentalized by an elite that plays at being gods with humanity? The final judgment is not a random event. It is the climax of a master plan. The idea of the end of the world has caused numerous theories, some inspiring hope, others mass suicides. And this is where the elite that controls information plays its cards. Several even fanned the historical confrontation between faith and science, dividing us, confronting us, while they advance. But now, several scientists and biblical scholars are studying the possibility that the end of the world is near. Why now? Why this sudden opening to imminence? Because the great amount of information and the immediate access we have to the events that are happening in the world make us think that they are signs and signals that the prophecy is truly being fulfilled. They are not signs. They are the manifestation of a plan. What is the secret information contained in the most impressive book of the Bible that is only now being revealed? And why now, precisely when it is almost too late? The context of its writing is vital. Palestine, year 90, shortly after the death of Jesus. The Roman Empire, a corrupt, murderous, persecuting empire, saw the idea of the Messiah as synonymous with political rebellion. John, exiled to the island of Patmos, received the supposed divine revelations that he captured in this most controversial book of the Bible. The Apocalypse, which means revelation through prophetic visions, seems to predict the progressive destruction of the world. But what if those visions were the result of a programmed download, an injection of information for those who would be the architects of this progressive destruction? One of the hypotheses is that we are in the final phase of the apocalypse, the Great Tribulation. And here emerges the first great figure of this orchestrated drama, a character who arrives after the first seal is opened. John describes him to us in chilling detail. I stood on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The Bible tells us that this beast represents all power that goes against Christianity, and that it will overcome those who try to face it. The first horseman of the apocalypse is a white horseman who would represent the false Christs who are going to be deceived when they renounce the true king who is Jesus. But what does this mean? It is not just about religious figures. It is about false messiahs, charismatic leaders, seductive ideologies that promise salvation but, in reality, divert humanity from the truth. Pope Francis has said that the Antichrist is corruption. It is not an individual figure, but a system, a mentality that permeates all spheres of power. Think of the political leaders who promise prosperity and peace while their underlying actions corrode societies from within. Think of the giant corporations that control information, food, medicine, presenting themselves as saviors, but whose practices harm health and freedom. This is the adaptive Antichrist, an invisible force that dominates us through deception. They tell us that the number of the beast is 666 or 66 letters. And here comes a revelation that few know. In no ancient language, neither in Greek, nor in Hebrew, nor in Latin, were there numbers. Numbers existed, but they were represented with letters. And when you translate this name into Hebrew, you get Caesar. Caesar, the symbol of political power that harms the church, that persecutes the truth, that imposes its will on spiritual freedom. This is not just ancient history. It is a pattern that is repeated. Who are the Caesars of today? Who exercise that political and economic power that, under the guise of progress, harms and subjugates humanity? The condemnation of corruption by the maximum head of the church caused an impact because it exposed not only nefarious characters like Hitler, Videla, Pinochet, or Stalin, but the evil exercised by human beings behind everything who are the true exponents of evil, the antichrists in the sense of those who deny Jesus and his message of freedom and truth. The first seal, brothers, is open and active, and its influence extends to every corner of our lives, deceiving us with false promises and corrupting the very essence of society. The second seal brings us a red horse that means red, violence, war. They describe to us the destruction of the community. And here, the conspiracy becomes chilling because the apocalypse, they tell us, speaks of a permanent reality. Violence among humans is since Genesis from chapter 3. There is no era in which there is no violence among humans, death and destruction. Think about this. If violence is a permanent reality since the dawn of humanity, is it really a simple human flaw? Or is it a programmed condition, a tool for control and reconfiguration? The 2 world wars of the 20th century, with more than 80 million victims, cannot be simply attributed to chance or to human nature. These were orchestrated massacres, conflicts fed and prolonged by hidden interests that benefited from the chaos, destruction, and the redefinition of borders and powers. The horse, a symbol of royalty, of power, of beauty, can also represent negative forces, powerful forces that have to do with sometimes also with divine pride against the will of God. This is not the spontaneous violence of man. It is the violence that emanates from a divine pride, from those who believe they have the right to play at being gods with the lives of millions. Violence is the mechanism of purge, the tool to decimate populations, to destroy old orders and build new ones, a chessboard where human lives are only pawns. We cannot fail to conclude, brothers, that the second seal was opened and continues to shed its red blood on a world that does not stop fighting. The third seal is manifested through hunger, and its statistics are a punch in the stomach. 1 person in every 9, 13% of the world's population is hungry. According to the latest UN report, 850 million people are dying of hunger in the world. They tell us that in the world there has always been hunger, that it is a horseman that has ridden throughout history for all of humanity. But do you really believe that on a planet with the capacity to produce food for everyone, hunger is an inevitable fatality? Everything whispers to us that hunger is a tool of demographic control, a silent weapon that keeps large masses of the population in submission, in despair, without the strength or energy to rebel. While a few accumulate vast fortunes and resources, the great majority struggles to subsist. The food crises, the unexplained droughts, the plagues on crops, are they natural or are they the result of genetic manipulations, orchestrated climate changes, or economic policies designed to concentrate power and food in the hands of an elite? Each new seal is much more powerful than the previous one and brings more victims on Earth. And hunger, brothers, is an executioner that does not rest. If we take into account the hunger that exists on Earth today, we can definitely say that the third seal of the apocalypse was opened and rides unceasingly throughout our world. The fourth seal, a black horse, although some translations describe it as pale or greenish, symbolizing death, unleashes many diseases, plague. And here, brothers, the present becomes terrifying because it is something that we also know globally through the media what is happening with epidemics, with endemics throughout the world. This, they tell us, makes us reflect on the fact that this was announced or was said in the apocalypse. Announced or programmed. The fourth horseman, who represents the different pandemics that have been in the world, has ridden for these 20 centuries. From the Antonine Plague in 160 AD, passing through the time of Justinian, the bubonic plague in the 11th century, the Black Death in the 14th century that claimed a quarter of its population in Europe. And they remind us of a text in the Apocalypse that says that a third part of men will die by these three plagues. A third or a fourth part. Our era already of the 21st century is no different. We are facing the H1N1 or facing the AIDS epidemic or the risk of a bacteriological war. All of which would make a plague like the fourth horseman of the apocalypse perfectly textual. Perfectly textual? Too perfect. Too convenient. What if these diseases, these pandemics, are not the result of natural evolution or bad luck, but of hidden laboratories, of depopulation agendas, of experiments with humanity to change life as we know it? The signs that the fourth seal could already be open are undeniable. The elites, who believe they possess a divine pride, have used and continue to use disease as a tool of control, fear, and social reconfiguration. Because, with each opening, the end of times and the final battle seem to be closer. The fifth seal does not speak of direct destruction, but of the request of the martyrs for the hour of final judgment to arrive. Martyr, in Greek, means witness. These are the believers who, throughout history, have paid with their lives for affirming their faith. They cry out to God for the end of persecution, for the end of destruction. But the answer, they tell us, is the most tremendous thing about the apocalypse. It is the most difficult thing to accept and to believe. The number must be fulfilled. They must have patience because the destruction will continue. The destruction will continue. This message of patience is, in our conspiratorial context, a terrifying revelation. It means that the elite that orchestrates these events has a number, a goal, a phase of destruction that must be completed before moving on to the next stage of their plan. The patience of the martyrs is the forced waiting of humanity while the pieces of the apocalyptic game continue to move. Who knows how long this waiting will last, but the message is clear. The destructive events will not stop until they decide that their number has been fulfilled. This seal, brothers, is the cruel confirmation that there is an invisible hand controlling the countdown. Here we reach the climax. If the first 5 seals already happened, wars, hunger, diseases, deception, and the cry of those who know the truth, then the 6th seal, the most fearful and dramatic of all, is about to happen. And for many, its consequences are impossible to stop. The apocalypse was written by the Apostle John with symbols and hidden messages so as not to fall into the hands of the Romans who would have destroyed it. This is the key. A deliberately cryptic language, an apocalyptic language that has nothing literal about it, which is euphemistic, which requires interpreting as if they were signs of difficult understanding. But what if this obscurity was a double layer of protection? Not only from the Romans, but from an even greater truth, which would be revealed only when the time was right, only to those capable of unraveling the codes. The number 7, they tell us, represents a cycle, from the weak to the 7 churches or the 7 angels. But also, in its negative aspect, the dragon who is the devil with 7 heads or the great Babylon who is seated on 7 mountains. A cycle of control of dark power that is repeated. John visualizes monsters and enormous natural catastrophes that would destroy the world. But the elite reassures us, this is a phenomenon that would not occur in less than 4,000 to 5,000 million years. 4,000 to 5,000 million years. They give us a timeline so vast that it makes us feel safe, it lulls us to sleep. But at the same time, others say that global destruction through volcanoes and earthquakes is imminent. Why this contradiction? Because they control time, the narrative of time. They want us far from the imminent truth. The 6th seal speaks of cataclysms and natural phenomena that are also destructive for the persecuted community. And here the difference is crucial. In the first horseman, those who unleash them are the enemies, the human or quasi-human forces that manipulated war, hunger, disease. But in this case, it is God himself who controls nature. Or is it that those who believe themselves to be gods have reached a level of technology or power that allows them to control nature? The description is terrifying and specific. Throughout the earth there will be a great earthquake that will give rise to the beginning of this apocalyptic cataclysm. It is not metaphorical. When the 6th seal is opened, the earthquakes will come. Here the word is literal. There is no other definition or explanation of any kind of translation error. Literal. This is a warning that we must take seriously. And what does science tell us? That the increase in the great number of earthquakes that have been occurring since the year 2009 is a phenomenon that science investigates and has not yet been able to give a true explanation. Has it not been able to, or does it not want to give an explanation? If seismographs only at the beginning of the 20th century began to give an important record, and now with better equipment and more quantity more earthquakes are verified, is it only because of better detection or because seismic activity is being deliberately increased? It is not a coincidence. It is a preparation. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in many places, and there will be famines and disturbances. It is the preamble. These are the beginnings of sorrows. The clues lead us to a specific place, the Ring of Fire, a Pacific fire belt that basically surrounds all the Pacific coasts of the Pacific Ocean. This is a zone of collision of continental plates and oceanic plates, where phenomena of volcanism and seismicity occur. It is a zone of permanent seismic activity of low to high degrees. Think of the examples. Ecuador, 1906, 8.8. Chile, 1960, 9.5, the most powerful ever recorded. Mexico, 1985, 8.1. Haiti, 2010, 8.0. This is not a list of disasters. It is a list of activations. The elite knows the weak points of our planet, the connections where they can unleash massive destruction that coincides with the descriptions of the 6th seal. They sell us the idea that nature defines the end of times. But what if it is the hand of a hidden elite that is pulling the strings, unleashing these phenomena? But the 6th seal goes beyond earthquakes. It also describes the idea that the heavens folded up as if they were a scroll. They talk to us about the extinction of the sun. The sun will become a red giant, an event that will swallow both Mercury and Mars, heating the earth until life would disappear. The reheating could be symbolized with fire. Let's remember our previous conversation about the atoms event, where the Earth's magnetic field was reduced to 5% of its strength, exposing the planet to lethal solar radiation and destroying the ozone layer. If the elite can manipulate solar events or the protective blanket of the Earth, what prevents them from amplifying these phenomena? The sun, the moon, the stars will fall and Jesus comes. This is not a poetic vision, brothers. It is a description of a manipulation on a cosmic scale, a spectacle of terror designed to instill fear and control, so that humanity accepts the coming of a savior figure who in reality comes to complete the agenda. In the midst of this announced devastation, John also described a place that will be saved, the holy city, the new Jerusalem descending from heaven from God. They tell us that it is the new people of God, described as golden, or that it is gold because gold in the apocalypse represents the character of God. A people so full of love for one another, so full of love for God that this is described as a golden city. But the conspiracy thickens here. If the original Jerusalem had already been destroyed when the apocalypse was edited, who are these chosen ones? What is the people that could be saved from the announced end? The answer takes us to Michoacán, Mexico, almost 700 kilometers from the Federal District, the New Jerusalem, a town and a religious community founded in 1973 by the priest neighbor, after the appearance of the Virgin to a peasant woman, Gabina Sanchez. The Virgin's message: to tell the world to do penance and to take the faith of the Holy Rosary because the world was going to be lost. This town believes, with their prayers, that they are going to save the world. And here comes the trap. Only those who have faith in God and who pray and who sin, who give the tithe, who humble themselves, who get on their knees before the tyrant will be saved, which is what they have always told us. Before the tyrant. Is this not a perfect description of a society of totalitarian control, where salvation is bought with absolute submission? The rules are chilling. Do not use technology such as cell phones, internet, social networks. Do not wear low-cut tops or miniskirts for women. Pray daily, twice a day, 3 times a day. Give the tithe. Dating is forbidden. Secular education is forbidden. Football is forbidden. Basically, children have no class of recreation and they spend their time praying. This is not a community of divine salvation, brothers. This is a social experiment, a laboratory of mental and spiritual control, an isolated society where a new Israel is created, a group of human beings who have acquired a character similar to that of God, or to that of those who believe themselves to be gods, through deprivation and manipulation. And the icing on the cake. This town, the New Jerusalem, has geological characteristics in its underground part where copper and iron plates or metals meet that make it stronger to resist a tremor. Coincidence? Or geoengineered protection? A planned refuge for the chosen ones of this experiment, while the rest of the world crumbles under the sixth seal. We ask ourselves, could the town of New Jerusalem be the only place exempt from the global destruction of the apocalypse? Perhaps, but not by divine grace, but by the selection and protection of the elite that controls the script of the apocalypse. The prophet Daniel, in his visions, one of the great apocalyptic mysteries, also reveals part of the plan. It is predicted that many will run here and there and science will increase. This is not a simple observation. It is a description of a programmed acceleration of human history. Think of the acceleration of human processes, of historical processes, that we are living. The amount of knowledge accumulated. Every minute about 2,000 pages are added to human scientific knowledge, and a person would need 5 years to be able to read all the material that is produced every 24 hours. Cars at 350 kilometers per hour, supersonic planes. A rhythm of life incomparable to the one that was led 2,000 years ago. This is not organic evolution. It is social engineering, a technological manipulation to saturate, overwhelm and accelerate humanity towards a point so unstable that it will collapse on its own. At the same time that knowledge and technology are skyrocketing, we see the wear and tear of the planet, the wear and tear of human relationships, the number of inhabitants. This is not a coincidence. It is the deliberate result of acceleration. The planet is squeezed, human relationships are fragmented, overpopulation creates tension. All of this influences and places us in a time of undeniable acceleration. Daniel's visions are not just symbols. They are the map of how human society, pushed to the limit, will reach a point so unstable that it will collapse on its own. A programmed collapse, brothers, to make way for the new world that the elite has been building. Finally, we come to the culmination of this script, the judgment of history, the parousia, the coming of the Lord Jesus at the end of times as judge of history and of the lives of all human beings. Our historical moment has a peculiar awareness of the transience of human history. We understand the end of the cosmos also imagined from the physical point of view. Even the earth is transient. They talk to us about three basic visions of the end of history: the utopian, idyllic peace; the restorative, a powerful kingdom of Israel; and the catastrophic. The elite has chosen the catastrophic vision. Before the end of history and of peace, there will be a terrible era of wars and struggles. Armageddon, the Mount Megiddo in northern Israel, is not just a symbol. It is a real place, the stage for the final struggle, a staging to legitimize their judgment. They also talk to us about blood moons, and the sun will turn into darkness and the moon into blood. This is the final spectacle, the manipulation of the heavens to instill terror and obedience before the great and manifest day of the Lord. The seventh seal, they tell us, supposes the end of history, the end of persecutions, the triumph of the chosen ones, the defeat of the wicked, of the beast, of the dragon, etc. The official narrative tells us that the one who carries history is God, and that he even allows the wicked and the cataclysms to harm the chosen ones. But in the end, the seventh seal reveals the divine triumph, the establishment of the kingdom of God in the world. The second coming of Jesus is a day of joy of victory for those who believe in Jesus, where the oppressors will be punished and finally liberation will triumph. But here is the deepest connection, the most disturbing revelation. This later the Church transmits it as if it were a revelation about what is going to happen after death, that there will be a final judgment over everything right then. That is already an interpretation that the Church makes that as part of its project of domination. There it is. The Apocalypse is not just a prophecy. It is not a historical book, nor a book of the future, nor the crystal ball. It is an apocalyptic Jewish literary genre. But the problem becomes terrifying when I want to place the apocalypse today or for the future. And the elite has taught us to place it today and in the future, precisely because it is part of their domination project. They were not thinking about the end of the world or about the future, but about the present, about how to control the present through fear of the future. The seals of the apocalypse are not random events or inscrutable divine prophecies. They are the stages of a meticulously designed plan for the reconfiguration of humanity. Deception, war, hunger, plagues, control over those who await salvation, the manipulation of nature and the heavens, and finally, a judgment that will be executed by those who have usurped the power of creation and destruction. Will there be a chosen people that can be saved from the end of the world? Will it be possible to minimize the consequences of natural catastrophes? The answer is no, if we trust the official narrative. Because if the recent interpretations are true, we are on a countdown. And it will not take a miracle to save us, but a deep understanding that we are immersed in an apocalyptic script that is being activated by a secret connection, an elite that plays at being God. The apocalypse, the best script for a fiction movie or the warning of an announced end? It is both things. It is a fiction created to be our reality. It is the warning of an end, yes, but an end that is not chance, but the culmination of a millenary plan of domination. Wake up, brothers. Because only time will bring these answers. And that time, I fear, is now. The future is not uncertain. It has been written. And now we are living it. Subscribe to the channel for more content and remember, the truth always comes to light.